So disinformation operates at machine speed. It's algorithmically amplified, visually convincing, and designed to evade detection. Especially in the age of AI, a lot of misinformation and deep fakes are so convincing that traditional detection mechanisms fail. And by the time they've gained a foot in the mainstream media, they're very difficult to counter. So when we talk about disinformation or misinformation, what do we mean? So misinformation is usually content shared without any kind of intention to deceive. So it usually originates from a genuine misunderstanding or ignorance around a specific issue, and it spreads organically through social media. Usually, and this is taken with a caveat, can be corrected with accurate information. Things like confirmation bias and um, obviously all the biases that we're susceptible to make that very difficult to correct, especially with coming out on individual facts. And another caveat actually around the definition of misinformation is the organic sharing through social media, because ultimately it's still amplified by social media algorithms, which typically lean towards engaging or inflammatory content. So misinformation tends to gain a quicker footing than genuine content usually. Disinformation, on the other hand, is a deliberately created campaign to mislead or manipulate. So it's coordinated, not necessarily by state, but can be state or non-state actors, and it's amplified through bots, troll farms, and external algorithms. So yes, we're still counting the social media platform's own internal amplification algorithm, but also um, other kind of algorithms which may influence that, and certainly bots and bot swarms to drive engagement of a particular piece of media. Um, Obviously, it's very resistant to correction, and it's designed to exploit trust and play on biases to make people believe that there's a lot more happening around the issue than there actually is. So some of the kind of main key overall trends since 2019. There's been a 500% rise in synthetic media. Over 90% of internet users, this is in the UK, encounter disinformation or misinformation online regularly. That's on a 24-hour basis. Uh, there is a lag time of 96 minutes before disinformation outpaces fact checking um, tools and procedures. So once it becomes entrenched, usually within that first hour, once the algorithm kind of picks it up, then there's very little you can do. And this is obviously whenever it reaches the point where disinformation penetrates mainstream media. So we're talking about like Facebook, Instagram, and those platforms. Once it kind of crosses that barrier, uh, 96 minutes before the algorithm starts to amplify it. And economists estimate that there's an estimated global impact of $78 billion per annum due to disinformation. So the real components of disinformation, when we think about like disinformation campaigns, they consist of these various steps. We can think of two um, two principal components: that of the narrative on the left and the amplification system on the right. The entrenchment at the end, that's almost the end product. So the narrative, those are the crafted story or false claims, which is usually built upon existing fears, bias, or divisions, and sort of seeks to wage further. So usually they start with a kernel claim or something with a grain of truth and exploit it and fabricate a bit more. So that might be state actors in the case of disinformation, or individuals or groups with vested interest, and they would start with a seed claim and then fabricate content around that. And those are content farms and designed to produce multiple pieces of content um, that can help sort of reinforce that, because it's kind of go back to that a lie I've said often enough is interpreted as the truth. Once it gets to the other side, where we have the bot networks and fringe media, that's the amplification stage. So the network starts to spread through bot networks where they amplify and help push the content and create sort of engagement around the content or the impression of engagement. Um, Usually this happens within fringe media as well, which starts to pick it up. These are places like 4chan, 8kun, Parler, Gab, Truth Social, all these various places. And eventually it starts to proliferate and move into sort of more mainstream platforms such as Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Um, and then that's when it starts to gain momentum and becoming entrenched, and the algorithm and the recommendation systems start to pick it up then as there's engagement driven on it and kind of push it further. So the seed narrative formation, as we said before, that kind of really reinforces existing societal fractures and grievances, and it's designed to be taken with from a sort of seed claim, something that's remotely true, and then add to it or kind of embellish it more, steering the sort of narrative in a particular direction. The amplification stage then obviously takes those narratives and adds more kind of weight to them, amplifying them, spreading them across various platforms, and obviously that creates more and more people engaging with that content. And obviously with the bots as well, they're engaging, and Facebook and the likes, they have their own bots and their own generative AI content creation tools, which promote it further. And that's kind of a way it sort of becomes more entrenched. So during the seed amplification stage, we would see like algorithmic pickup, coordinated cross-platform migration, and structural incentive misalignment, where the actual the business model of Facebook, for example, rewards engagement over accuracy. So recommendation engines and stuff like that can very easily be exploited because as long as content's engaging, then those models will actively amplify it. For example, a 2023 study by Grandetti et al. Found that 64% of white supremacist content on Facebook was generated by its own recommendation engine. So that's Facebook's own um, generative or Facebook's own recommendation system and its own AI moderation tools generated 64% of all white supremacy content on the platform, um, which is obviously highly problematic because that exemplifies the kind of the divergence between the sort of business model itself. So once a particular narrative or a seed narrative can get to that stage, it no longer matters whether it's true or not. It's just whether it's engaging as far as the algorithm is concerned. Finally, wrap it up with some key summaries.